asked Donald Trump, do you think Mark Zuckerberg has rolled over for you because you threatened him? And he said, yeah, probably. He didn't say, no, I didn't threaten him. He said, yeah, probably. So that authoritarian streak is there. It's coming our way. We've got a lot of media companies. You're a big free speech champion, I know. Should be worried about a lot of media bosses just rolling over for an incoming government. It's not a healthy relationship in a democracy. I'm worried. And Elon Musk's role is a very interesting and scary role. We have the world's richest man, owner of the most influential messaging platform on the planet, probably. Now getting a government job, lots of conflicts of interest, but also got the ear of the president-elect, but writing pieces in German, in the German newspapers, in favor of a party aligned with neo-Nazis, pushing Tommy Robinson, a man who you and I know who he really is, maybe Americans don't, pushing for Tommy Robinson's freedom, pushing for the right in Canada. You know, it's scary stuff, Piers.
Their argument would be that the left behaved so disgracefully towards Trump and indeed towards Elon Musk that this is deserved payback, that actually the boot's on the other foot now, that when it comes to authoritarian behaviour, the woke left really behaved, as you and I have debated how you could categorise it, but behaved like a bunch of fascists for a long time, and that actually it's all come back to bite them. They've lost power, almost all power in America, and that you do, and I feel, I'm interested in what you think, but I feel like the whole woke movement, if you like, is now being kicked firmly into touch, and Zuckerberg converting in the way that he's done so dramatically, pretty much to where Elon Musk is, maybe a recognition that some of the stuff that they got up to in the 2020 election, you know, censoring the New York Post over the Hunter Biden laptop store, well, they're legitimate concerns. You know, you may laugh, but I think the tinderbox for all this was set. The tinderbox for this was set when big tech, which was liberal dominated, decided to censor a legitimate, true story about Hunter Biden's laptop in the run-up to that election, which could have affected the election. When you do that kind of thing, then eventually it's going to come back and bite you, isn't it?
No, and by the way, Zuckerberg's comments are a reminder that it was never liberal dominated. People like me on the left never accepted that bullshit premise. The liberal media, the liberal Silicon Valley. Yeah, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel are not liberals. And I just think, you know, the whole woke stuff, you and I have debated that many times before. On the Hunter Biden stuff, that was very exaggerated. But it's funny you should mention the Hunter Biden New York Post suppression story, because that's what Musk is doing now, Piers. Surely, I know you like Elon Musk, but surely you've seen that he has been very repressive in his running of Twitter. Anyone he doesn't like, who goes against him, he nukes their accounts. He nuked a report the other day about whether or not he's Adrian Dittman or not. He has restricted access to pieces. He suspended journalists. You know this, right? There's data showing that Twitter has actually complied more with foreign government takedown requests on Musk's watch than on Jack Dorsey's watch. As for the comparison, the boot's on the other foot, you'd have to point to me where Kamala Harris threatened the media when she was running for president. You'd have to point to me where Joe Biden was suing CBS News as Donald Trump is doing right now.
But when it comes to threatening the media...
You're a journalist. You do not support. Do you support Donald Trump suing CBS? No.
Let me answer.
Hold on. You gave a very long question. I want to finish my answer.
Can I answer on my own show?
No, I'm answering your question first.
I can't answer.
Well, no, because you asked a question, so I'm answering it.
You just asked me a question.
Piers, let me answer, then you can come back. No, I didn't finish my point. My point is Joe Biden is not suing CBS News. Joe Biden is suing CBS News. Do you support that?
Who was in recent times...
Sorry, Donald Trump.
Hang on.
Donald Trump is suing CBS News. Joe Biden isn't.
If you let me, I'll answer your question. Which president of modern times was the biggest and most draconian threat in terms of his actions to journalists in America? Do you know? Barack Obama.
You're going to say Barack Obama?
Yes, because I'm right.
I think Barack Obama was bad on those issues.
He was the worst, by far.
I think Donald Trump was worse, but I think Barack Obama was right.
You know why Trump's suing
Donald
people?
Trump right now...
Trump's suing people because... Actually, people like George Stephanopoulos lied about him. They exaggerated what he'd been found guilty of. And guess what? When you lie...
You and I both know ABC... You and I both know ABC would have won in court.
ABC didn't go to court. They gave him $15 million. Now, you might say...
Why do you think that is, Piers?
Because they knew they were going to lose.
Or because they're sucking up to an authoritarian?
Or because they knew they were going to lose.
Bullshit. No legal expert agrees with you on that. Piers, legal experts don't agree with you on that, actually. Most lawyers don't agree with you on that. You're wrong.
Mehdi, you'll never agree with me about
things
like that.
It's because they're scared. It's because everyone's bending the knee.
Your agenda to accept what may have been a simple case. George Stephanopoulos lied about him.
Do you support Donald Trump suing a pollster because he doesn't like a poll result?
I think Trump.
This is insane, Piers. I thought you were a free speech champion,
who he
but now
likes.
you're rolling over for Trump as well.
Donald Trump can sue who he likes.
Do you support it? Is my question. Do you support a president of the United States suing media organisations he doesn't like?
Do you
support
believe
that? Do you?
Do you believe he has a right to?
So you're rolling over like Mark Zuckerberg as well. Wow,
do you believe he has a right to sue people?
For Donald Trump.
Does he have a right to sue people?
Of course he has a right to. But is he right to?
Okay, then we're agreed.
Is he right to? Is the question. You're dodging.
Then we're agreed.
No, it doesn't. No, we're not agreed. Do you support his lawsuit? Yes or no?
Doesn't matter.
Wrong? It's a very simple question.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, you're too scared to answer. Got it.
No, Donald Trump sues people all the time.
Do you think he's right to sue the pollster? And do you agree with it? You have strong views, Piers, but you're not telling me today.
Let's get to your strong. Let's get
I guess
to your.
You're like Mark Zuckerberg.
Let's
scared
get
of
to
Donald
your
Trump.
strong views, Mehdi.
Oh yeah, let's change the subject.
No,
so I don't have
think
to
you've
answer the
forgotten
question.
whose show
It's a simple
it is.
question. Do you support Donald Trump's lawsuit?
It's not your show.
Do you support Donald Trump's lawsuit?
It's not your
against
show.
The pollster?
I'm asking you the questions.
All right. Well, everyone can see that you don't want to answer the question.
They can. They can see that I want to ask you questions, not have you pepper me with questions. Now, let me ask you a question. This gang rape scandal in the UK is horrific, has always been horrific. I think it was despicable in terms of the details. I think it was despicable it took so long for it all to get properly exposed. I still don't think it has been. I think it was utterly despicable, the scale of the cover-up, whether it was the police, whether it was council officials, whether it was social workers, everyone whose job it was to protect these young girls failed them spectacularly. I think on that we're probably completely in agreement.
Yes.
The issue that is raging now is whether there should be a new national inquiry and whether someone like Elon Musk, in his very blunt, often very abusive manner, as we've seen with the rhetoric he's used against Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips and others,
dishonest,
which I don't agree with, the way he's phrased himself with some of these, particularly Jess Phillips after the murder of 2 MPs in the UK. So I think, again, we'd agree on that. But I've also taken the sort of back step and gone, actually, I do think there should be another national inquiry. I do think the first one, they didn't act on any of the findings anyway, but actually the first one was very wide-ranging. And actually what it needs, it seems to me, from all I've read and seen this week, it needs a more specific national inquiry that focuses specifically on this northern rape gang scandal in all the 50 towns and villages that was happening. So we can actually get to the bottom of exactly who got abused and raped, who did it, what happened to them, have the perpetrators properly been brought to account, have the ones who were here on, maybe dual passports being deported, whatever it may be. In other words, proper accountability right from bottom to the top. And potentially people going to prison over this are not just the perpetrators of the rape, but perpetrators of the cover-up. Now, A, do you agree with that? And B, Elon Musk pushing this, is that actually a big problem, notwithstanding you and I agree about the rhetoric being wrong?
So, okay, 2 questions. Let me deal with both of them. On number 1, I'm glad you asked that question. It's the first time I've been on your show and we actually don't have to argue along left-right lines where I'm the lefty and you pretend not to be a right-winger. This isn't a left-right issue. It's actually an issue of what do you think is the right way forward, right? This is a horrific scandal. What happened to children in the UK is disgusting. It is one of the great crimes of our time. No doubt about that. And I can't even read the details. It's sickening.
Horrific,
it's disgusting. And by the way, this happened. A lot of this, it's ongoing, obviously. It's an ongoing problem in every country. But, the real scandals happened 10, 15 years ago, and that's what's tragic that we're talking about it now. But I would say to you, look, on the national inquiry point, I don't know. It's not a left-right issue. So I did sit down this week to kind of get my thoughts together. What do I think about this? I'm not an expert on this stuff, nor are you. So I looked at what the experts are saying, and 2 people I respect very much in this field. One is Professor Alexis Jay, who ran the independent inquiry on child sexual abuse. It was a 7-year investigation from 2015 to 2022, cost over £100 million. I think it's 468 pages long. I haven't been able to read all of it, but I read the 20 recommendations she made, Piers, and I think it's a scandal that the Conservative government, people like Liz Truss and Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, who are jumping on this far-right bandwagon, to quote Keir Starmer, outrageously did nothing, Piers.
Well, he's actually reined back, to be fair, he's actually reined back on that phrase today in Parliament, in PMQs. And he's said he understands
good,
that,
good for him.
He basically has made it clear you're not necessarily far right if you think there should be a national inquiry, which I'm glad he's done.
No, of course not. And that wasn't the point.
I'm not far right.
That wasn't the point. It's not. No. No, but that wasn't the point. words were misconstrued. I heard his words. He was making very clear that conservative politicians who are using this for political gain are jumping on a far right bank. That's a separate point. Obviously, calling for an inquiry is not far right. As I just said to you, I was about to call for an inquiry till I did some reading and said, here's what Alexis J says. She says, I did this report, 460
But there's a big problem with that report.
Recommendations. The conservative...
Yeah, but you mentioned... Okay, but Mehdi, you mentioned how many... Okay, but look, you mentioned how many pages are in the report. Do you know how many times Rotherham got mentioned?
Yeah. No, but she did a separate report on Rotherham as well.
No, but do you know how many times he got mentioned in the national report?
But she did a report on Rotherham.
No.
Because she did a specific... You know there's an independent report on Rotherham
I'm talking
as well.
about the national report. Do you know how many times he got mentioned, Rotherham?
No.
Once. So the absolute...
But she also did a separate 185 page... She also did a separate...
No, my point, though, is that the epicentre of this scandal was Rotherham, and yet it merited one mention in her national report. And that's the point that people are making, which is actually that national report was so wide-ranging, taking in all sorts of different kinds of abuse, that it couldn't properly focus on this actual specific scandal of predominantly British Pakistani men abusing young white girls. That's the scandal that needs a proper laser-like focus, I think.
Well, OK, and that's fair enough. I think that we can debate about the Pakistani men angle. There's a big debate about the ethnicity factor, as you know. But just one last point on the Alexis J report.
The vast majority were British Pakistani.
Can I finish a sentence?
Well, they were.
That's not true.
In
those specific towns, yes, but as a phenomenon in the UK.
What do you mean it's not true?
As a national phenomenon, the Home Office... Can I finish a sentence, Piers, or are we going to get through this interview?
Sure.
Every time I start a sentence, you interrupt me.
Go on.
The Home Office, under a Conservative government in 2020, put out a report, not sure if you've seen it, got a lot of coverage, saying that the majority of men in grooming gangs, which is not a great phrase, are white men under the age of 30. That was the survey data that they found. They said, we need more research. It's not a hard and fast result. We don't have enough ethnicity data. Do you know a lot of police forces, Piers, 30, 40, 50% of victims and perpetrators, they just don't register the ethnicity.
How many white men?
Not to say
how many white men?
Gangs,
okay. How many white men?
That's not to say specific gangs in Rotherham and Rochdale and Telford were brown.
Okay. So let's just focus
But Piers, here's what bothers me. And you asked me about Elon Musk.
Sorry,
I didn't get a chance to get to that because you cut me off.
I'm allowed to respond to what you just said. Because the reality is what you're doing is you're massively distorting. You're massively distorting the story, aren't you?
No, you are. I started telling you about Alexis J. You jumped in with your gotcha about Rotherham. Have you read the 20 recommendations of Alexis J's report? Can you tell your viewers what the 20 recommendations are?
It's not a gotcha. And by the way,
how many times is Rotherham mentioned in the report? It is. Have you read the 468-page report?
Mehdi, when I went on your show recently, I let you ask me all sorts of questions because it was your show. Okay, I'm asking
and I let you answer them. You haven't let me finish a sentence.
I have.
You haven't let me finish a sentence.
You keep saying things which I want to challenge. You keep saying things I want to challenge.
Yes, so let me say them, and then you challenge them. So let me just say them, and I promise, I say them, and then you challenge me.
Let me ask you a question.
I'll say them really fast. I speak really fast. Let me just say them. Alexis J says no need for a new inquiry because her 20 recommendations,
I don't agree with her.
You don't know what they are, haven't been implemented yet.
I know.
But that's fine. I do agree with her. David Greenwood, who was this lawyer for the victims in Rotherham. You mentioned Rotherham as a gotcha, I think. David Greenwood, who was the lawyer in Rotherham of the girls. He was that's my opinion. I have a right to opinion. David Greenwood, the lawyer in Rotherham, of the dozens of girls, he's the guy who represented the girls in Rotherham. He says, I don't think we should have another inquiry. There's too many inquiries. We need action. We need to get the recommendations done. Another inquiry, he says, would be a distraction. Now, that's not a gotcha on my end either. Maybe we should have another Ash inquiry. I don't feel that strongly about it. I'm just telling you, Piers, for your viewers who are following Elon Musk's nonsense, a man who knows nothing about this stuff, that David Greenwood, a lawyer involved in this, and Alexis J, who did an inquiry in Rotherham and then did a national inquiry, says we shouldn't have another inquiry.
Yeah, and I'm making the point that in her national inquiry, she mentioned...
You and I are not experts.
I'm making the point in her national inquiry, she mentioned Rotherham once, and there, to me, is the problem. But the other problem...
And in her Rotherham inquiry, she covered it in detail. She also said, don't make a link between Pakistani men and this problem, because white men also are involved in grooming gangs.
Rape gang scandal in the 50 towns and villages involved in this rape gang scandal. Tell me this. You've just tried to suggest that more white men were doing it than British Pakistani men. Bit of a surprise.
The Home Office
bit of a surprise, I would think, to everyone you've just named.
That's the Home Office report.
Who've done the report. Okay, so how many white men involved in this rape gang scandal?
That's the Home Office research, Piers. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Hang on. How many white men have been taken to court, charged and/or convicted of raping these white girls in these 50 towns and villages? Just for the record.
Okay. All right, I don't have the full numbers, but let me give you some examples. In 2023 in Glasgow,
What
there were
percentage?
7 years of child
Give me
sex
a
crimes
percentage.
prosecuted. Piers, we don't have the percentages. That's the whole point.
We know that the very vast majority are actually British Pakistanis.
So hold on.
What you're trying to do, you're trying to deflect it into thinking it's somehow white men doing all this.
Oh my God. So in Glasgow, there were white men. So 11 people abused 3 children, one of them in a nappy diaper.
I'm not talking
white
about
gang.
Glasgow.
You're not talking about that, nor is Elon Musk. All of them under the age of 12.
Right.
In Cornwall, in 2010,
These
3
aren't the
years of sex
scandals
crime.
we're
You're not gonna
talking
cut me off
about,
when I talk
Mehdi.
about sex crime. 6 men. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. 6 men abused 30 girls, the youngest of whom was 5 years old. And you've just made my point for me. These are the scandals we're not talking about. Why? Why are we defining child sex crimes and grooming gangs by race, unless you're a racist or trying to make political hay out of this? I care about the victims of all crimes. I don't give a damn whether the perpetrator was brown, black, white, blue, or yellow. I think we should support the victims of those crimes. And if you're only obsessed with the perpetrators, as Elon Musk is, as Robert Jenry is, then you don't actually care about these girls. That's what Alexis J said.
But the argument, as you know, the argument, as you know, from those who do want a big further inquiry, is that actually it was a very specific section of the community, a very specific section of the Muslim community, and it was British Pakistani men who they believe were operating under some warped cultural thing, which they felt entitled them to behave this way.
Well, that's not proven, right? That's what we need. That's what we need. Obviously, more studying on, more research on. I agree with that, because these guys in places like Rochdale, Rotherham, were British Pakistani men overwhelmingly in those cases.
Yes.
But it's very interesting that you pick a sample and then say, these are the towns we're talking about. They're all brown. Well, why can't we talk about Cornwall or Glasgow or the West Midlands? I'm saying this is a phenomenon that happens nationwide. There are multiple, Piers, surely you'd accept, there are multiple factors. There are experts on child sex abuse who you should invite on the show. I'm not one, who will tell you there are multiple factors that cause this stuff. I mean, this happens in every country in the world. In these towns, clearly there were a lot of things going on. We know about police corruption. We should be talking about police corruption in places like Rotherham, where the police knew what was going on, and there are Exactly, and there are allegations of like money and drugs going between the perpetrators and the police.
All sickening,
These girls were treated badly, not just because they were white. Not just because they were white, Piers. Let's talk about the class issue. Because they were seen as worthless. They were seen as poor, working class, not having any value or credibility. So there's a lot of things to talk about